you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hey, folks, it's Voss here from ChrisVossShow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There are things that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show. This family loves you, but doesn't judge you, at least not as harsh to the others, because you're here to improve your life, the quality of your life. Hear the most amazing stories and journeys and lessons from the amazing guests that we have on the show that will make your life better. If you want your life to be worse, they got other podcasts for that. We don't do that. Refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss, all those crazy places on the internet. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today, we have an amazing young lady on the show. We're going to be talking about her book and insights. It is entitled A Stroke of Grace, A Journey of Faith, Healing, and Supernatural Encounters by Grace King. We're going to get into her amazing story. She suffered from a major blow to the head back in 2018. She has spent the last 8 years working with the Holy Trinity to repair what doctors said was impossible. She spent years in psychosis battling to find reality. God himself showed up and started giving her visions. It took her 5 years to piece the story together. She now understands that strict obedience to God's ways and Christ's teachings does, in fact, restore the brain to its original design. Welcome to the show, Grace. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. Give us your .com. So where can people find out more about you on the interwebs?
Okay. I'm the lead theologian at Grace King. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to the website, and my contact information is on there as well.
All right. So give us a 30,000 overview. What's inside your book?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
Give me a 30,000 overview of what's inside your book, please.
It's the journey that I've had over the last 8 years with God showing up and healing my brain, and all of the things that he did while I was healing. It's the story about restoration and faith and supernatural encounters and just everything that he did to piece my life back together, as well as my brain. It's the whole story. So what I share with you today is going to be about the brain and what he did to restore my brain function after severe blow to the head. And the book is really detailed on the journey, the last 8 years of me piecing this puzzle together, and him. And he just kind of got into every crevice of my life, every nook and cranny, and he just went crazy. I mean, he fixed everything, you know,
wow.
And that's what the book is about. It's the actual journey with God. And he was so patient while I was healing, and we worked on other things while I was still piecing the brain situation together.
Now, were you religious before you had this episode with the, medical community and stuff? We'll get into that here in a second.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked. I'm not religious at all, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm very spiritual. No, I feel I don't like religion. I feel like
okay.
I'm not a religious person.
All right, we'll flesh it out. I was just wondering because, the timeline of events and stuff. What happened so give us a thing on what happened with your brain and all that.
Okay, so I had a cerebellar stroke back in 2018.
Wow.
I was at work, and I'm a hairstylist by trade, and I was working on a client. And I was washing a bowl in the sink, and all of a sudden this jelly-like substance popped out of my eye, and it looked to the right and then to the left, and I could see out of it. And I shook my head really hard, and it popped back in my face. And I knew in that moment, I was like, oh my goodness, something bad's about to happen. And I didn't know at the time, but it was my soul or the spirit, I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But anyway, I went back to my client, started finishing working on her. And then within 2 hours, I fell to the ground, and it felt like 50-pound weights were hanging from my face and my body. Wow. And in that moment, when I was on the ground, I heard a voice say, "Get up and walk." and I couldn't get up. I couldn't move. And so I peeled myself up, and it felt like I was walking through thick, thick mud. And to make a long story short, I ended up making it to my car, and I was going to drive to the hospital. And as I was driving to the hospital, I came out of my body from the waist up, and I was floating above my head, super high. And I was driving, bear in mind. And I just remember seeing the beach, because I live in Destin, Florida. So I could just see the beach, and I saw everything, and I could see my legs and my arms and my head, the top of my head. And I had a near-death experience. Yeah. And I knew in that moment, I was like, oh my goodness, we're all living wrong, and I couldn't understand what that meant. I was like, how are we doing everything backwards? But then I knew also that I was in critical time frame, and I knew not to, stop my car and get out of the car. I waited until I went back in my body, which took about 15 minutes. And then a couple of days go by, and then I saw Jesus. I saw him. He lit up like a hologram next to me. I saw his sandals and his legs and the bottom of his robe. And he let me know he was walking with me. And I knew in that moment it was him. And I just, I grew up Catholic, and we were non-practicing Catholic. So we went twice a year, but I went to a Catholic school and, so I had a very regular family. But I knew who Jesus was, and I recognized him immediately. And but then, so that happened, and then I remember 8 months went by. I had given my life back to God at that point, because I knew he was real and he'd helped me with some things. And 8 months go by, and I had a doctor perform medical malpractice on me after the stroke, and that's what fried my brain. My brain was scrambled. He gave me 7 cortisone steroid shots in my feet for drop foot. And my brain just couldn't handle it because of the TBI that I had before and the stroke. So I had 2 major head traumas. And then this one sent my brain into I was crazy within 24 hours. I didn't know my own name. I didn't know what was happening to me. And I had to immediately, my family had to come pick me up, and they put me in a hospital, and doctors were, saying, there's nothing, we don't think there's anything we can do to help her. She may never come out of this. And around that same time, God showed up and started giving me supernatural. He started communicating with me supernaturally. Wow. And it was so strange, and it scared me half to death, because to be in the presence of God when your brain is that messed up, and he's everywhere. He was everywhere. And I was so aware. And he would give me visions. He would give me visions he would tap everything around me and say, be selfless, do for others. And I saw his hands in this motion, tapping around my body. And then he gave me a vision of this huge book in the sky, and everything I believed in was on the right, and his face was on the left. And he said, if you're going to follow me and you're going to go where I'm taking you, you can't take anything that you believe in. And I was very puzzled by that, because I was trying to reorganize my brain at the time. I was journaling a lot, and I was putting everything into categories and my brain was trying to go back to normal. I thought if I programmed it, put all the information back in myself, that I could somehow reset my brain. And he let me know that all my beliefs were hurting me, and for the healing part of the brain. And so, to make a super long story short, 5 years go by, and I've had visions. I can see and hear in the spirit. I heard things like be perfect, let go. And once I finally pieced the puzzle together, and it took 5 years, I realized that God was trying to get me to implement the teachings of Christ. And this is where the story gets kind of serious, because for me, it was like a wild ride for years. And it was exciting, and God was around all the time. And at the same time, he was fixing things in my life while my brain was healing. And a little bit at a time, I would implement. I took the commandments, and I took, trying to love others and forgiveness with people. And that was hard for me because I have a very traumatic past. So loving others unconditionally did not come easily for me. And so I needed time to heal, and I had to spend a lot of time with God during that year of my life, trying to forgive and get past some things. But anyway, so as the next couple of years unfolded, I started realizing I was healing. That implementing his teachings and forgiving others, loving people unconditionally, and giving my life back to God and doing things his way. Obedience. That's what he wanted. He's like, if you are obedient, your brain will heal. It'll go back to normal. It'll reset. And lo and behold, it did. When I tell you it reset, the medications that I was on, I should not have been able to get off of them ever. I was on 7 different medicines, high doses of antipsychotic medication. And I am here to tell you that my brain completely reset. And I was on these medicines for 7 years. And I was able to lower all of them to the bare minimum. And that, statistically speaking, the medical field, they say if anybody's had 2 psychotic episodes in 1 year, they're labeled schizophrenic for life.
Really?
I lived in psychosis for almost 5 years. Wow. And I battled it on and off, even on the medicine. So I know because my brain connects things, and from that, and obedience took it away, took all of it away. And I think clearly. I have my brain back. I have my sanity back. I'm not fighting with I'm not fighting the mental fight. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that listen to your show that know what I'm talking about. We fight with our minds and our just our thought process in general. And if there is anybody out there, listening that has struggles in that category, for me, it was obedience, and God it was like he was so happy. My brain just completely went back to normal after a very traumatic blow to the head.
Wow. Yeah. Now, you mentioned TBI, and then you mentioned this other thing that I Googled here, wait, that's the TBI stuff? The cerebellar stroke, which is where blood flow stops going to the cerebellum. Clearly, I flunked biology. And the part of the brain that controls balance, coordination, movement is blocked or burst. Did you have a blocked one or a burst one? There's hemorrhagic or ischemic. Who makes these words up?
Ischemic, yeah.
Yeah. That's quite wild. So did you have the TBI before you had the stroke, or was that part of the stroke damage?
No, I had it before. I'll give you a little backstory. So my ex is in the NFL. He played in the NFL, and he had a really hard time with a brain injury as well. And when he would drink, he became abusive. And I got hurt. I got injured pretty bad one night, but we're pretty sure he has CTE. And he didn't know what he was doing, but he hurt me pretty bad. And I ended up with a severe brain injury because of it. Wow. And I had that about 4 years before the stroke.
May have been a contributing factor then. Maybe. It may have been
in the book.
Okay.
Yeah, that's in the book. I talk about that. My personal journey and story. Yeah, I wrote about it.
Yeah, we've had many people on the show that have written their own journey stories about TBI, and doctors that have come on to talk about TBI. And yeah, it's a challenging thing. I didn't know about TBI before. I had a best friend. We used to go do coffee together and lunch and stuff and hang out. And one day he drank a bunch of vodka and was walking around his kitchen. I guess he passed out and fell right on the back of his head, and woke up in a pool of blood and had blood on the brain. And it's hard, we don't hang out or do anything because it's really hard for him to be out public or noisy places. Do you run into any sort of those challenges with some of the
I did. Noise was a real problem, and being around people for a while. And I don't know if you know anything about the prophetic, about people that have spiritual gifts. I mean, I'm sure you have your own, everybody is born with spiritual gifts, but it's not something we talk about very often. But when I had the TBI, it landed me in the spiritual world. And everything in that world lit up to me. I could hear and see in the spirit already, and it just amplified it. And I had dreams, that would come true. And I had visions and third eye, spiritual eye visions since I was a child. And all of that was amplified. And it was very hard to deal with. It was very hard. It was confusing because I hadn't developed the gift at the time. I just knew that I had that ability. And then I think that's why God, showed up, and he was so present and patient with me, because he knew that I had gifts, and then he knew that I had a TBI, and all of it needed to be cared for. And it got better when I talk about obedience and the brain going back to normal. I literally can function in the real world, and I couldn't because of that TBI. I struggled back then before the stroke with staying organized, being I'm a mom. I have 3 kids, keeping track of the kids, keeping track of everything, work, business, all that stuff. I mean, it was a lot to try to process at one time.
Yeah. Especially when you're injured, and it's not fun. Did you have the children when you were, did you get this injury after having children, or have you had the children since?
No. So we have children with 3. It was during.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was during.
Yeah, that's got to be challenging. I mean, because your body goes through so much changes, and you got to have your brain function. And so you go through this journey. You I guess you really get back into. Now, you mentioned before about how you're not really into church, or you weren't really into church, or something along those lines. Yeah, where are you at now in that journey, I guess? Yeah,
so I do go to church. I feel like I have church every day at my house, because I constantly, talk with the Lord and discuss my day with him, and he's my best friend. So every day, is kind of like going to church in a sense, but I do go to church on Sundays. I did switch over to a non-denominational church, but recently I've been having some frustration with the church that I have recently attended. So that's an ongoing journey in itself, is trying to find a church that I feel is a good fit.
So tell us about what you do here on your website, and maybe how you help people and yourself there.
Yes. So I'm the lead theologian at Grace King, and I help explain the why behind scripture. And so that's kind of my gift, is that, I'm really able to connect the dots on the basics of scripture to help people in their walk with the Lord. So I've kind of got this cool thing that I can connect the brain, God, and the very beginning of time all together at the same time. And it kind of helps people, if you can kind of just let your mind go for a second. So God explained it to me like this. He's, we've got the brain and God are basically connected. So we live and move in the midst of God. God is everywhere, and we live and move and have our being inside of God. So when we form a thought, and any thought that you have, God is full of infinite knowledge of good and evil. So, and if you take Adam and Eve, when Eve ate the apple and exposed us to all the good and evil, it wasn't that, people just turned out to be good and evil. We have been exposed to the good and evil inside of God, his knowledge. God uses good and evil to create with. He creates life stories for each one of us, the timeline in our life. And he uses good and bad to create with, because sometimes we need to learn a lesson. Sometimes we need to, have a door opened, or, whatever. Like, I don't know. It's hard to explain it, if you don't know what I'm talking about. But good and evil, we're exposed to that but
what was it like working with the Holy Trinity when you were going through this?
It's the most love I've ever felt in my life. I felt so cared for. I still feel very cared for. I feel like God loves like a mother loves, but he told me that he feels like a father, and that, yeah, he's a provider, but he is like the ultimate father. It is like blood is thicker than water with with having them as a family.
And so, do you feel that you're now at 100% brain power back? And
100%.
have you been able to get off the prescriptions and stuff like that? Totally.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. How long have you been off the medications, for those people out there in the audience who might hear this and be like, hey, maybe, this is the path to take, and read your book?
Okay. I would say a little over a year. And I had to get off of them slowly. It's taken years. It didn't happen overnight. I had to come down slowly, because you can have relapse psychosis if you're not careful with certain antipsychotic medications. And it was a very slow process. It didn't happen overnight. Like I'm saying, it probably took 3 years just to come down off the meds.
Wow.
But once I did, and I struggled with, a lot of those medicines can put a lot of weight on you. And I had to lose 40 pounds, because I had gained a little bit of weight. I lost the weight, and then I had brain fatigue, brain fog all the time. But immediately, when I turned my life back to God and agreed to do things his way, I had brain clarity, I could think. And that was something that I knew. I knew when I realized, when I turned my life back to him and I felt the difference mentally, I knew it was safe to get off the medicines slowly, which I did work with my doctor. We worked together. And I told her what I was trying to accomplish and what I thought that I had stumbled upon, because it's like research, to me, it's groundbreaking research. And it's 8 years of my life that I've dedicated to trying to understand God, the brain, mental health, doctors, medication, and spiritual gifts all in one. It was a lot. It was a lot to really dissect and put the necessary attention on each subject so that I understood it correctly. But my doctor did partner with me, and she said, I feel like you really have it together. I feel comfortable with us doing this slowly. And we did. And it was a very big success.
Nice. Wonderful. It's great to have these stories of where people find their footing and redemption, et cetera, et cetera. Now, on the website, what do you do there? Is there services that you offer to other people? I see partners, teams, features. Tell us about some of the offerings there.
Yeah. So right now, all we are offering is, if people have questions about biblical doctrine and applying to everyday life, the why behind scripture, how to get your walk going with the Holy Spirit, just wanting to turn your life back to God. If you have questions about how do you do that, what does that look like? What is God? I have so many, I have hundreds of stories about God, and he's just so wonderful. And all he wants, if I could say one thing, God just wants to know us. He wants a personal relationship with each one of us. He just wants us to turn to him and ask him 1,000 questions like a child, just like, why this, why that? He has answers, and he loves to communicate. But you have to really set aside distractions and chaos. And so I help people, if they write to me on the website, I love guiding people to him and sharing how to have a godly experience and what to expect.
Yeah. And now it says there's a team on the site. Do you have a bunch of people that work with you to counsel people, or how does that work?
So right now it's just me.
Okay. And then you have partners on here, a tab for partners. Are you looking for partners, or?
Always.
Okay. And what do those sort of partners look like? If anyone's out there in the audience listening, what sort of makeup do they need to have to qualify for that?
A strong walk with the Lord, a Holy Spirit led life.
What if you just jog with the Lord?
Encourage somebody, anyone that wants to encourage others, but I really do look for people that have God stories within their own life.
Yeah.
I don't
probably
care
shouldn't
about
enlist
biblical.
Satan.
What? I'm sorry.
You probably shouldn't enlist Satan. He probably wouldn't be a good fit for the team.
No. But I don't care for the, and I know this might sound bad, but there's a lot of biblical scholars out there, and that's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a biblical scholar. I want somebody that's been in the trenches, that has the nitty gritty, the God stories where he's finding you in darkness and pulling you out and reshaping and remolding you. Those are the kind of people I want working with me.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of those people that are out in the world, and I love the fact that you're helping people and you're trying to share your story. Of course, the great thing about books and coming on podcasts is sharing your story. There's people out there that, you're going to reach. You may never hear from them, but you're going to change their life. You may save them. You may make a difference, and they pay it forward, and you'll never see some of the different people you impact when you throw a wide net of message. But there is somebody out there. I remember being told that about my book, where they're like, somebody needs your book, and they're only going to get you. You're the only one who can get through to them, and they need you. And there might be more than one person, but that they need you. So you have to finish this book. And, books like yours and speaking about this stuff and sharing stories, a lot of people, especially in injuries and damages like this, especially with the brain, sometimes it's hard to just have a conscious moment or be, you're dealing with drugs and you're taking for prescriptions. And, I was just sick and probably drank enough Dayquil and NyQuil to kill a small horse. It seemed to try and keep my nose from drowning me in my lungs. I love drowning inside my own body. That's always fun, especially when it's snot. But anyway, I digress. But, it's hard to, I've never had a brain injury to my knowledge other than just being alive. I think most people can agree in the audience, he does have a brain injury somewhere. But they've been putting up with me for 16 years. What can you do? But yeah, it's great that you share your story. Anything else we need to know about some of the work you're doing there and how people can reach out to you and get involved with what you're doing?
Really just the website as for right now. Like I said, I'm really new at sharing my story publicly. This is, my second podcast, and I kind of told God, I was like, look, I'm going to get the business going. I'm going to do everything that you ask me to do, but you're going to have to open the doors. So the doors flew open in the podcast world. So
wow.
I'm fairly new at sharing. Like I said, I've been sitting on this story for years, and I felt that the nudge, get out there and share it. It's time.
Yeah.
So you can reach me on my website. I have an email. It's the contact info is at the bottom of the website. So just scroll down, and if you send me, shoot me an email, I'll personally respond. And if you have any questions, it doesn't matter what it's about.
Yeah. People can reach out to you. They can hit the Let's Chat tab on there. So as we go out, what do you hope people get from this? What do you hope that they receive when they read the book and listen to your story?
Encouragement, that this world is not, for me, this world was not quite what I thought it was. And finding God and finding his truth and learning about the storyline of the planet was really reality shaking. And so I really hope that people will seek him on their own and want to know the truth and not just live life carelessly or blindly, because, God is real and the Trinity they're wonderful, but their storyline to me is very heartbreaking. And I had an experience with the Father. He said, Jesus took me up in a supernatural experience. And the Father said, we were only trying to keep people safe. And I didn't have a chance to talk to him. He didn't let me speak. As soon as I was in the vision, I was out of it. But he spoke those words to me, and he sounded like a heartbroken father. And his tone of voice, I'll never forget it. It was deeply, deeply impactful. And that kind of sent me on a wild goose chase biblically, trying to understand the Bible and to understand what God was really wanting to get through to us. But his love is just immeasurable. It's out of this world. That alone would just it broke me, it broke me. And to know that he cared that much and he cares about each one of us that much. And the fact that he stopped everything he was doing to help put my brain back together just meant the world to me. I just hope people seek him. And I just hope that everyone, wants to know more about him. He loves to share himself. He loves for us to get to know him. And I just, that's all I can hope for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's the wonderful thing about these stories is the message of hope, that you're not alone, that there are pathways and blueprints to get out of crises and what's the word I'm thinking of? Things that where, everything comes at us at once sometimes in life, or we feel overwhelmed. And there's ways to find peace and grace and sometimes we have to stop in life maybe and think about those things. Cause I went up to the canyon this weekend to go out to a nice restaurant that I like to go at that sits on the lake. And it's very peaceful, and it was a beautiful sunny day. And I remember driving up the canyon, just looking at the beauty that's up there. And it's kind of like a day where I spend being grateful and focusing on just peace and, kind of relatively thinking about my life, the future, where I am, being grateful for what I have, but also just kind of being present. That's kind of the whole journey, is just to kind of be present in the moment. And I'm able to do that with photography. With photography, I find that it feels like it stops time for me. That's awesome. And that I'm in the moment, that I'm present. And it seems like the day lasts longer in that moment, in that period. But I was driving up in the canyons and I was like, I need this. I need to move up to the canyon so I can wake up every morning with just this beauty. I can go out and have a coffee and just the peace and the stillness and
be present
nature.
In the moment.
Yeah. And the fresh air too.
Right. No, I get it. Yeah. I get it.
And so you got to have those moments where you stop. And I force myself to do that every Sunday. And, it's so important to take these moments to listen and stop, because it's so easy to get caught up in the machinery of the world and the noise and the crap and the doom scrolling and the, this is that and that's this and yada, yada, yada. And sometimes you got to do a lot of self-care, I think, especially nowadays. We got wars going on and rumors of wars and, what is that, a biblical thing there?
No, I don't even watch TV. I haven't watched TV in years. And
it's probably better for you.
I just can't. I just can't. Yeah. I can't.
Yeah, it's better to find peace. Thank you for coming on the show, Grace. We really appreciate it. Give us your .coms as we go out too, if you would, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
Give me your website as we go out.
Oh, it's www.graceking. And
thanks to my audience for tuning in. Order up her book wherever fine books are sold. A Stroke of Grace, A Journey of Faith, Healing, and Supernatural Encounters by Grace King. You can find it out there. I believe it was October 2025 published. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next.
You've been listening to the most amazing, intelligent podcast ever made to improve your brain and your life. Warning, consuming too much of the Chris Voss Show podcast can lead to people thinking you're smarter, younger, and irresistible sexy. Consume in regularly moderated amounts. Consult a doctor for any resulting brain bleed.
All right, great show, Grace. Good